Clearly, obviously, we've got people online as well as people in the chamber. I'm sure it's going to be recorded, and if I can remind members, if they've got their telephones on, if they put it on silent, no doubt mine will ring, and that would be great. And obviously, if you wish to speak, those of you online, if you could put your hand up, and those in the chamber, if you could put your hand up, then I'll deal with those as they're raised. Okay, item 1 on the agenda is apologies for absence. Councillor Perkins. Okay. Item 2 on the agenda, declarations of interest. Okay, here we are. I've got a declaration of interest on item 5, the safeguarding report. Given schools are mentioned in there, I need to declare a personal interest that I'm a lay inspector for school inspections. Self-employed, not employed by Estin, but obviously, and one of the areas I inspect is safeguarding, okay, in schools. So I just want that recorded, please. Any others? Nope. Item 3 of the agenda then is the minutes of the previous meeting for correctness only. Norma?
Thank you, Chair. Just one minor amendment needed on paragraph 4.6. The date should be 30th of January 25, not 24.
Okay. Someone prepared to move the correct record? Thank you, Norma. Can I have a seconder? Oh, thank you, Jason. I've seen your hand there. Anyone against? No? Just to make mention, I don't know whether I've got the authority to do it, but I'm going to ask for it to be done. In my view, the minutes are too long. They need to be shortened. I can give you all a lecture on what a minute should contain, but ultimately the main thing is the resolution is the main issue. Any issues that need to be raised in the minutes, matters of comment, which obviously members make, the big issues need to be raised in there. But apart from that, naming individuals, etc., shouldn't be in there. And the reason I say that, in my days as a previous monitoring officer, we had a High Court case, and they went to the minutes, and unfortunately we don't have stenographers in councils, and therefore the interpretation of the minutes cost us £5 million. So minutes need to be, they need to be correct, they need to be, concise, but the main issue is that they need the resolution. And again, the other thing is, years ago, minutes weren't recorded, so that's what I'm asking, if it could be looked at, Reece. Reece?
Yep. Sorry, Chair. I don't know whether I entirely agree there, in that we're a public committee and we're accountable to the public, and I think it's really important that we operate transparently. And I think it's, I don't necessarily think there's a need to attribute comments, but I do think when a discussion takes place which leads to a recommendation, that a member of the public needs to understand what the committee debated and why it got to that recommendation. I think the minutes are good, actually, and I've got quite a critical eye, as you know. Well, you know, when I read them, they're clear, and I think they represent quite well the discussion that's gone on.
Okay. Reece.
Yeah, thanks for that. So I suppose just to update everybody, so we're doing a pilot at the moment using something called Copilot, which is part of Microsoft Suite for AI, which is assisting with writing minutes for meetings. And we're reviewing what minutes look like as a result of that. So that pilot's ongoing at the moment. Obviously, it still requires a lot of human oversight of that. So we're not just using Copilot and then producing minutes as a result of it. It actually requires staff to make sure they're accurate and reflect it. As part of that review, we're always also looking at the recordings of the meetings, because obviously that more detailed element of the meeting and the responses is recorded. Now, that's a shelf life at the moment because the system it's on, but we're also looking at different ways of recording that. So take on board both those comments. I think they're all valid. We've all got a responsibility to make sure there's transparency in the discussions and the decisions are made, but we also need to look at the most efficient way of doing that. So we'll keep you updated around those things.
Yeah, obviously, it's not a matter for me, as long as it's looked at, and I assume it'll be for the Democratic Services Committee then reporting through to pick that up. So if those comments could be relayed, and both Norman and my comments in reality be relayed, and then we'll see what comes out of the machine at the very end. But there we are. Thank you. Okay, item 3. Or is an A, it is, a recommendation table. These are the action points, I believe, which have come out from Taylor. This is your chance now, come on.
This is Leanne's item. I didn't like this, but yeah, this recommendation highlights all the actions from the committee. I think Leanne has made an effort to address it now, so it looks clearer what actions are being completed, so hopefully that's from the last committee.
Norma?
Sorry. One thing, we're talking about the recommendations now.
Agenda item 3. Agenda item 3A.
Yes, the recommendation. One of the things that I'd really like on this, which I think I've said before, is to have a target set, date set for every recommendation, because then someone's got something to work to. And I was particularly concerned the sharing of the information relating to housing benefits subsidiary audit with the committee, and that was requested in September. So if we have a target date, even if it's the 30th of October, we know...
I think Rhys is going to bare his soul to us.
Oh, that's okay. I'll forgive him.
Sorry, somebody's given me a defective mic. It's certainly not user error. I think the final column, look at it, I think the words target date should be in it. It doesn't look like it is, and most of them are not populated, Norma, so we can look at that. And you have my apologies around the housing data. The service area provided me that information really quickly. I completely forgot about it. As I was saying to the chair before the meeting, I've compiled a response, which you can have in the next couple of days. When I reread what the request was, it wasn't just the pure data, it was a percentage of those against the numbers of claims coming in. So I requested that information. I've just seen as I've come in, I've had an email off the service manager around that. So hopefully I'll be able to get that out to the committee tomorrow. So my apologies for that.
No problem. But I think the point is, if we have a target date set, Taylor is in a good position then to chase people and say, has this been done, you know, when it comes to preparing the papers.
Yeah, thank you for that, Norma. So if we deal with 3 and 3A, can I have someone to move that A, the minutes are a correct record, B, that we note the action log or the recommendation table subject to the addition of the target column. Someone move. Thank you, Norma. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Jason. Anyone against? Nope. Thank you. Item 4 then on the agenda is the call-in public sector housing. David?
Thank you, Chair. So I'm here today. I'm David Walton. I'm the Head of Housing and Communities. So I oversee our housing services, including the Environmental Health Housing Service, which this audit pertains to. So just as a bit of background, as part of the planned internal audit programme last year, the houses and multiple occupation work that we do with environmental health was audited. The findings of the audit were that there was limited assurance, hence the calling, and there were in total 11 recommendations and findings. Now, as detailed in the paper, we have completed 9 of those, notwithstanding the fact that the critical finding was really for us to do further analysis and to develop an action plan leading on from that. So what I propose to do today is give a bit of an update on the status, and really this is the opportunity to kind of share where we are for Audit Committee to consider the progress so far and the level of assurance that our management actions are able to provide and have given. So if we start by looking at the critical finding, obviously that's the one that's probably most pertinent to this meeting. So the risk-based review of the audit has been completed. That identified that the number of Category 1 hazards that no resolution had been recorded to was 238, rather than the 256, I think it was, within the audit. And so it's 238 dwellings, so 238 properties where Category 1 hazards were present. It is worth saying that Category 1 hazard is a serious issue within a property. It doesn't mean that that property is unfit for human habitation or anything like that. We would serve a prohibition notice within those scenarios. However, clearly it is a serious issue that needs rectifying to support the residents. So in line with our risk-based approach to reviewing the findings, we've kind of really looked at the security of tenure and the housing type that occupiers were in, and we've kind of amended our approach based on that because, you know, from our perspectives, we feel there's different levels of risk and also kind of some of the actions, the public interest to take enforcement action differs. So we are working very, very closely with our registered social landlord colleagues. We've written to all of them and we're in the process at the moment of compiling and sifting through their responses to really establish next steps. Obviously, our registered social landlord partners are subject to their own sets of regulations, but our powers under Housing Act 2004 are still relevant, and we will take action should any hazards be remaining and require resolution. There were owner-occupied properties. We've taken the decision there that at this stage, and based on the risks, it's perhaps not in the public interest to take enforcement action against people who own their properties. There are also a number of long-term empty properties. So the approach we've taken there, based on the risks, is to work with the empty properties team, which sit within the same service, and really focus there on what can be done to bring those properties back into use. That's the overriding priority. And obviously, through that process, any hazards that have arisen would be resolved. I think for us, a really kind of key risk area were the houses in multiple occupation that were due for that have been outstanding for the longest period of time. And that's really because houses in multiple occupation are more likely to present with the more serious risks. At this stage, we've really focused on those hazards in kind of 2019, 2020 and dating back. And we have, at this stage, managed through re-inspecting and through the re-licensing process to resolve 19 out of the 26 properties that we were able to identify through our risk-based approach. So that feels like some positive progress and hopefully providing some assurance there. Now, in terms of the remaining properties, generally kind of single-occupied private rented properties, we have developed a risk-based approach again there to think about the most serious hazards, particularly, where that's relevant. Within the report, it says this is, the aim is to have this completed by the end of the financial year, but that's subject to recruitment, and that's reflected in the amber rating within the short risk register we've provided. I'm pleased to report back to committee that since the writing of this report, we've actually been able to secure the additional resource that we needed to do that work. So I think if I was presenting or writing the report today along with my colleagues, that risk would be a green, because we're now going to be able to motor on those inspections to really kind of drive our ability to understand whether these hazards still exist, and if they do, to take the appropriate follow-on action. You'll also notice that in terms of the remaining actions that haven't been resolved, there's a plan in place. I think in particular the one around management capacity is a significant one, and as the report notes, we're going through the process at the moment, or the team are going through the process at the moment, looking at how we can ensure that the team are robust as possible, not only to deal with these issues, but longer term to avoid any of these issues from reoccurring in the future. So that's a really kind of brief update of where we've got to based on the findings. It is an issue that within housing and communities, we really do recognise the potential impact, and we are trying to take this as seriously as possible to resolve the issues that have been highlighted, and actually we welcome that being highlighted. One last point to make before I open up to kind of questions and comments is that obviously in line with our internal audit procedures, our colleagues within internal audit will be returning at a date that will be determined to re-audit the service and to, report back to confirm that the actions we've taken have resolved the issues and have provided adequate assurance that we've tackled the issues as appropriately as we possibly can. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, David. I think that's a lot more positive than where we were when we asked you to come in originally, and the original report that we received from Audit. Clearly, there's still some work to be done, and I'll ask questions next, and then maybe we can deal with it at the end as to what we want to happen next. But I think you've made significant progress, so thank you for that. Well, I've got a couple of hands up now. So, Councillor Reynolds. Can you hear me, Councillor Reynolds?
Yes, can you hear me?
Just.
Right,
okay. Mr. Cage, you can do it. There's no problem.
I do apologise. I'm on my phone at the moment. If you don't mind, I'll keep my camera off as well. Because
no, you carry on. I think it's a bit louder now, so hopefully the officer can hear what you're saying with regards to the question.
Okay, yeah, I've had a few technological issues this afternoon, to say the least. But anyway, first of all, thanks, David, for that report. It was really good to see, the majority of weaknesses that were identified seem to be being addressed. They either already have been or they are being addressed. One of the issues was the recruitment of competent and experienced officers. Now, I know you said you've had the resource, received the resources. Does that mean that those officers have been recruited, or is that still an issue?
So, as I said, we've recruited resource to help us manage this issue, and as part of the work we're doing to review the service, there'll be a longer kind of term strategy coming out of that to maintain capacity and maintain the level of skill and expertise that we need within the team as an ongoing process.
Right, okay, I just wanted to make sure that I understood what you meant by that. That's great, thanks. The only other question I've got as well is on page 29 of the report, I think it's the reference 1.09, it mentions that officers are, I think the word that was used was reminded to input accurate and up-to-date data. I was just wondering how often that is being implemented and monitored.
So the team, now this is on a process of work, so it's regularly updated and amended. It's probably also worth mentioning that the environmental health team are now engaged with Newport Intelligence Hub to really ensure that our systems are robust as possible and linking the data together so that where possible we're able to automate some of the data collection to avoid human error.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, David. Thank you, Chair.
Jason, did you have a question? My apologies. I don't know whether I'm colourblind, but I didn't see your hand.
It comes in order now sometimes. They've changed it now. I'm not quite sure if it's a question they can answer, actually. As many people know, I sat on the planning committee in the council. With you're saying about bringing these houses back into repair and back onto the market, would that be like a timescale on that as well within this audit as well for that to be made, or no?
So I think the work around empty properties is kind of a separate consideration dealt with by a separate team. Empty properties, we have a dedicated team within the council that's focused on bringing properties back into use, and the owners of those properties are able to work with the council to receive a range of grants and things like that to support that process.
Okay, brilliant, thanks.
No, Norma?
I've got a number of questions, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Can I just be clear, David, on the additional resource you brought in? Is this to do the HMO checks?
It is, yes.
It is
Yeah,
to
to
do
get
it-
out and to help us do these re-inspections of the hazards.
Right, okay. Because when I was reading the report, one of the things I couldn't quite understand, was it management capacity or was it management competency? And was it administrative capacity? Because a lot of that work would be administrative work, wouldn't it? You know, it would be, you know, filling forms, checking things, etc. So is it management capacity or competency, or is it both?
I think it's really is that kind of capacity point, and I think there's various factors that kind of impacted upon the capacity in terms of some turnover within the team. There are some issues within the sector in terms of the numbers of environmental health officers coming through the process.
Right.
It's a little bit like engineering or planning or something like that. I also think that, you know, the team in terms of getting out and inspecting properties, there was an impact with COVID that's kind of now largely resolved, but that all kind of feeds into kind of quite a complex picture there.
I understand, fine. Turning now to the HMO register update, how big a job is that?
The HMO register update, we've made good progress on that so far. It's stalled, but we're confident that that will be kind of in place very, very shortly. And I think that
Very shortly, because you were talking about 4 months of the report.
Well,
Before that, I hope?
I hope so, yeah. I hope so, but we need to give that kind of that backstop, I think.
You talked a bit about category 1 hazards, and you were taking a risk-based approach. Have we any idea of the number of category 1 hazards we have?
As a whole, in the city or within the audit, so the number of category 1 hazards were, I will double check this just to be 100% clear with you. So in total, the number of category 1 hazards were 452. But the dwellings that we identified was less, so it's 452 in total.
Sorry?
452 in total.
It's quite a high number.
It was a
quite
high number.
And you know what worries me, as you're doing this work and addressing, you know, the risk-based issues, it's a fluid situation. So there'll be more category 1 hazards being brought to your attention.
There will be. I think part of the kind of the issues kind of playing into the team's capacity there is there is a real focus within the team on trying to deal with what's coming through the door, because obviously if you're presenting with someone in really kind of serious disrepair now, that's been the focus, to get out and inspect those properties. So it's a fair point, and I think that is why it's so crucial that we look at the overall system, the resources and how the team are functioning, and really enable them, you know, to do more work out in the field. I mean, we've spoken in the report about things like the use of mobile technology, so actually in the field we can go and record rather than going out with a notebook and coming back to the office, and that just leads to human error.
That's good. And then on page 25, we refer to procedural guidance. Has that now been improved, and are the procedures and the training notes sufficiently adequate?
Yes, they are.
And all the legal requirements have been met? Good, okay. And then my final point was on page 28 about past inaccuracies. They've all been corrected now?
Yes.
Good, thank you. Thanks, thank you.
Thank you, Norma. Are there any other questions? Tom?
David, I just want to clarify, like, when you're talking in terms of 452 category 1s, that was over just 256 properties, wasn't it?
Yes.
So I know that's significant, but it is that. And that is correct?
Yes.
Yeah, fine. I guess the one thing I wanted to say is this is a lot better than I thought it was going to be. And I sort of see what's gone on, and it's nice to have that sort of assurance. So, because this isn't a nice place to be, and not a particularly, it's a very hard area. And appreciate some of the procedures in there. I guess from my point of view, Gareth, is checking the ongoing thing with that, because the resource seems to me to be very tender. You know, if the resource goes and if the people who you've brought on don't match up or whatever, then I think we're almost in danger of getting back to square one. Would that be fair?
I think that, you know, within the team and the sector more widely, quality resources at a premium, and this is why the team and I are really trying to take a holistic approach to resolving these issues, because the point's absolutely right. What we don't want to do is resolve the historic things and not have a structure and the systems in place to enable us to manage this on an ongoing basis. That's got to be the kind of the longer, well, the medium-term priority once we've dealt with the initial findings.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yes, Chair.
Oh, Jason, sorry.
Hi, thanks, Chair. It's just another quick question as well. When you're going through the category ones about the HMOs, is that before it becomes a HMO or after it's become a HMO? Because we have we have this awful questions all the time when it comes to HMOs through planning of different issues, everything else we have with them. So is this the categories you've got, or category one, is that before or while the people are actually in tenancy?
So it could be either. Within this case, it's much more likely to be, and it was, hazards that are picked up during the inspection. But, you know, a resident who's in a property with disrepair that's not an HMO, or, you know, could refer into environmental health, and we would conduct an inspection.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any other questions? Now, I've just got a quick question. Obviously, you've prioritised the serious issues in property, and I should imagine there are several categories below that. In regards to the several categories below that which you don't inspect, because of resource and capacity, has that been reported to the relevant committee, and committee has agreed that as a policy? Because obviously what is likely to happen on occasions is one of those will come back and bite you, and as long as the council or the committee is aware, I just want to make sure that you've got that cover, because I understand obviously with other public health matters, environmental health, you know, food premises, you do the very top risk ones and you can't get to the bottom ones because there's no resource. But as long as someone's been told that, that's just the assurance I want to be given.
So, being completely transparent, that's something we're still kind of developing and looking at as part of the work, and we are in initial conversations with our cabinet member prior to taking, you know, any recommendations through the relevant processes.
That's great. That's great news because, you know, obviously, what I wouldn't say is you know, you may have it delegated down to you, but sometimes when the thing goes pear-shaped, you do want some top cover. So, you know, that's great. That is.
Yeah, thanks. I suppose just a couple of bits from me, and one's following straight from that. I think, you know, obviously part of the work that David's leading with the service area now is around that resourcing picture. And actually, you know, if you've got X amount of resource, you can deliver X amount of service. And actually, if the organisation, politically and operationally, wants to do more than that, they have to apply the resources to that. And I think that's the piece of work that needs to be done now. And the other point I just wanted to make, you know, David's still a reasonably new head of service within Newport, and you know, I look at the purport, and it's David and Natalie sat behind him from Children's Services, so that's probably about 70% of the organisational issues there and pressures on services. And, you know, just a massive challenge with Newport. We've talked previously around the housing challenges, and David's trying to manage that right across that service, and I think doing a really good job, and this is really good evidence of a real focus on the problems and resolving them, so I think it's really good.
Reece, I think we acknowledge that. The only other question, sorry, there was mention previously about trading standards. Are trading standards playing their part in this now, or have they left it all to you?
So the service manager's been working with trading standards to ensure that our pathway to refer across to them appropriately is as robust as possible, and we're satisfied that it is. So that kind of partnership work has happened.
That's great. Thank you very much. There are no questions. Any comments? I think most of the comments have been made. I think, you know, we're in a much better position than we were previously. And I think if you could thank your officers, as well as yourself, for the hard work that's been undertaken to get us where we're at. We're not at the final destination yet, though. So what I was going to propose is, as a recommendation, we note the contents of the report and the good progress made. And I was also going to ask then, as a second recommendation, that you report back on the 27th of March with an update. Obviously, we're fully aware that internal audit will look at you at some stage to ensure that you know, you're up to standard now. But I think as a committee, we would like you to come back and say, look, you know, in regards to the issues we've raised in November, we've now plugged all those gaps. Here we are, and, you know, 19 out of 26 properties, but whatever, we know then 26 out of 26 or whatever it is. So it's just that assurance again that you're on the ball and we've not forgotten it. We wouldn't forget about you, but that you're not forgotten about. So if someone's prepared to move that we note and that we have a report back on the 27th of March. Thank you, Don. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Norma. Anyone against? No, thank you very much. Thank you, David. You can stay if you want, and but if you want to go, you carry on.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, as I said, thank you very much. And thank your team as well.
I will do. I'll pass that on. Appreciate it.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 5 then on the agenda is the corporate safeguarding follow-up report. Tanya.
Thank you, Chair. So, as you said, this is a follow-up report from Audit Wales in relation to the review of our corporate safeguarding arrangements, which took place in the summer of this year. It was a follow-up audit of previous audits that had been undertaken in 2015 and 19. And what the outcome of that audit report was that there was still a number of recommendations from the 2019 report that the Council needed to make progress on. You will see prior to the report that there is a management response that's been completed, which outlines the actions that the local authority intends to take against the 4 recommendations that have been made by Audit Wales. So hopefully committee will be assured that the action plan is already in place. I can confirm that that action plan has been run past our colleagues in Audit Wales for them to review and give comment on, and it's been amended as a result. And just also to highlight to committee that something that the local authority has put in place in recent months is agreement to stand up a local authority safeguarding board. So this is in addition to regional arrangements that we have. So we have a safeguarding board for children and adults within the Gwent region, but this is a local authority specific safeguarding board which will not only look at safeguarding across social services and education, but those wider corporate safeguarding arrangements which will absolutely pick up the progress against the 4 recommendations in this report, but also wider things that are coming over the hill in relation to safeguarding, not least the national safeguarding training standards, which are in the process of being rolled out across Wales. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you for that, Tanya. Obviously, there are going to be some questions in regards to this. And again, I think we're going to be in a similar situation in regards to you coming back at some stage in regards to updating us as to what has happened, because obviously the management response is quite challenging because some of the dates have now gone. You've got some dates of 26th of November 2024, which was 2 days ago. So you know, the issue is that you set yourselves a challenging target, some 30th November, so that will be 2 days' time. So just picking that up as a general comment, you know, what you don't want is hamstring yourself into meeting a target which you actually can't meet because you've got major problems. I'm not saying you've got major problem, but you've got, you know, some issues to address the recommendation. You may have addressed them, but I'll just make that comment at the moment. Are there any questions? Norma.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure whether I understood things correctly, because I read the management response form, obviously, but, you know, it left me thinking, where are we in relation to the actions? Now, you say there's an action plan in place, and Audit Wales have amended it, or is this the action plan?
So the management response form.
The management response, you
Yes.
call that the action plan?
Yes.
Right, okay. Because I didn't get, reading that, it didn't actually tell me, didn't give me confidence that things were moving forward, and it had target dates, and, you know, by then this would be done. It left me a bit, oh, okay.
Okay. Well, apologies if that's not clear. I can give the committee a bit of an update. So what's happened since September, when we received the original report, is we stood up a task and finish group within the local authority to work on these recommendations within the management response form. And the dates, you're right, they are challenging, and there was a reason for doing that, to make sure that we had good pace in relation to taking forward some of these recommendations. And we had a second meeting of that task and finish group last week, so I can tell you that certainly the recruitment training that is referred to in recommendation 1, so reviewing our recruitment training for managers to ensure that they understand their responsibilities around safeguarding when recruiting new staff, that has been developed, and I've seen a version of that, and the task and finish group, the deadline for the giving feedback has passed, and that is going to be now forwarded to our corporate leadership team for them to sign off and for it to be mandated training for our staff. So there's definitely so I think I would say that this was written at a point in time, and I hope that I can reassure committee that there has been progress made against this. And what will happen is the first meeting of the new local authority safeguarding board is in the diary for January. That board will take up responsibility for overseeing these actions and other things.
Yeah, I think, obviously, I think, I'm not putting words in Norma's mouth, but in regards to the recommendations, there'd normally be an action plan under it, setting out some tasks, who will be responsible for it and by what date. I think that's what Norma's looking for. Clearly, what you've said orally is that's been done, but there are still some other task under that. So it's got to go to the corporate management team at some stage for sign-off, and it'll have to go somewhere else, I should imagine, to council if it's a policy, etc., etc. So I think what I would suggest we do is, clearly, we're going to have a lot of oral feedback on this tonight, is that I was going to suggest again another recommendation that you report back on the 30th of January, committee, given the time scale you set yourself, and then you can outline, these were the actions in regard to recommendation 1, 2, 3 and 4. This is what we've undertaken, and we've ticked it off, and it's been signed off. So that if it's gone to the management team and it's gone somewhere else, then just tell us that's happened. So I think, is that what you were looking for, Norma?
Chair, exactly, because, my notes were, where are the actions? And where's the progress report? And I think that's what this committee needs, because we need to be assured this audit report has been addressed, because some of these go back a long time.
Thanks, Chair. I thought it might be helpful just to mention we obviously have the 6 monthly regulatory reports, and these actions will be reported there, and the next one is January. So at the January meeting, there'll be a further update on those actions as an interim. I know you might want to look at it in more detail.
The director needs to come back, and because, again, I'll come on when I make some I did make them previously, but I will come on to it, because it's not just your responsibility, this. You may be the director taking the lead on it, but there are issues within this report that go across the council in regards to safeguarding, I think they need to be picked up as well as very specific items. In the narrative, we raise the member training and how many members have done it. There's also an issue in regards to education and obviously the number of schools that have undertaken that. There's an issue in regards to governors. So I think those are the issues we need to pick up and tick off to say, look, if it's 70% in education, we would like to be 100%, wouldn't we, in reality? Same with governors, same with members. I know the member numbers need to be looked at. So it's all those issues. Rhys.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So look, I think I get, it'll come back as part of that regulatory review, but I think, obviously Governance and Audit Committee should to be assured and to give assurance around things. And obviously this is and Tanya is the director where it organisationally sits, but, the Chief Executive has made it incredibly clear to everybody in the organisation that this is, a huge priority for us to get to resolve. So I think that really detailed action plan around and progress plan from January, the Chief Executive will be asking for that and has asked for it anyway. So, that we will do that. I just want to pick up the education stuff. I'll send a note from the Chief Education Officer out with the minutes so you've got it as a committee, because obviously we did a bit of a trawl back through that, and the data this represents, and it's not Audit Wales' fault, it was what was provided at the time. We've checked on that, and that is, close to 100% compliance, right, across the piece. But we'll provide you that assurance as well.
It'd be good, because the draft report I saw, it said 35%, and it's now up to 70%. So, that concerns me, the data. So if we don't know where we are, so,
Yeah, Chair, and I think I think what we need to be mindful here, I think what we've got here are some systems issues that we need to resolve. And what Audit Wales have highlighted to us are those systems issues. So, those are the things that we need to work on. And you quite rightly say that is an organisational piece. It is not a social services piece.
Norma, have you finished? Okay. Councillor Reynolds?
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me okay? I'll just check that first.
Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear?
Okay,
yes.
That's great. Some of the points I was going to raise have been touched on either by yourself, Chair, or by Norma, but I'm going to maybe attack them from a slightly different angle. I noticed the dates as well for some of the target dates for the tasks are either very recently passed or coming up in very near future. But also the violence against women and domestic abuse and sexual violence is actually coming to scrutiny next week as well, where I would imagine the training and levels of compliance, that will all be discussed then. So I just wondered whether the timing of this discussion, whether maybe this might have been better set after that scrutiny meeting. I know it's too late now, but it just struck me when I was going through the report that with some of these things probably being discussed by scrutiny, we might have had a few more answers then for this discussion after the scrutiny meeting. My second point then, do you want me to do these one at a time, Chair, or should I go through all my points?
Yeah, if Tanya respond on that.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to say that the report that is coming to scrutiny next week is more of a regional report, because our Voucher SV board is about the function of that board and the work of that board. It wouldn't necessarily focus down on the training that has done by Newport staff. So it will focus on a slightly different issues.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I just did think that to even bear that in mind, that we might have more information to inform this discussion, but no, it's a valid point. The next one I wanted to raise was one of the Audit Wales conclusions saying that the Council, I'm just quoting this now, the Council has still not fully addressed the 3 recommendations highlighted in our 2019 report, so they're the main weaknesses in its corporate safeguarding arrangements. I know that's been slightly touched on already, but it's just the fact that it was a 2019 report, we're now in 2024. those weaknesses seem to be around the training and compliance monitoring and potentially incomplete reports going to scrutiny on the action plan. So I just wondered if maybe we could get a little bit more detail on the progress in terms of dealing with those weaknesses, and then also in terms of the recommendations in the 2024 reports, what sort of timescale have we got to implement those?
Okay, thank you for that. So I think I'd just go back to your first part of your question was about the last audit was 2019 and we're now in 2024. I think, and just to remind, I guess, the committee that in that interim, we did have a 2-year period where we were dealing with COVID. So naturally, that would falter some of the progress that we may have made in relation to some of these recommendations. I'm not saying, that's totally the issue at all, but there's no doubt that it would have played a factor because as local authorities, we were focusing on a national, well, a global situation. So I just wanted to provide that little, little bit of context. However, again, just to give yourself reassurance that the local authority are taking, we've agreed and absolutely accepted the recommendations by Audit Wales, and we're taking, really rapid strides, I think, to correct that. And as Rhys has already said, that the Chief Exec is very clear about what is expected and the progress that must be made. And hopefully, as we go forward, we can assure committee about that progress. Sorry, can you just repeat the second part of your question?
It was just in terms of the 2024 recommendations. I just wondered if there was any sort of guidelines in terms of timescale to implement those recommendations.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I've already said, that there's been a couple of the task and finish group meetings have happened. The new safeguarding board will take over oversight of those recommendations and the timescales for those recommendations. And I would say, and it is, I do feel we need to push this. It's absolutely right that we should. So we'll give an update at the end of January to committee. But by the spring, I would see a lot of these, if not all of these recommendations nailed down, because I know from my conversations with officers who are part of that task and finish group that there's been a significant amount of work around those systems for capturing our training data, that has happened already.
That is very reassuring because I mean, it's already been alluded to, but this is such an important topic, isn't it? It's something, it is everyone's responsibility within the council, and it's reassuring to hear that, so thank you. Thank you, Chair.
No problem. Any other questions? No? Any comments? Don?
Reading the report again from Audit Wales, it's not a good report. I'm really pleased what you were saying earlier, Gareth, about coming back in January, because on the basis of this, I'm not assured. So if that wasn't on there, it was going to cause me a problem, because I know, and it's really good to hear the progress, but on the basis of it, it's not addressing a lot of the issues, the detail that I would want to see. So my comment is I would strongly support them coming back on the 31st. And what you're saying in terms of it's going to be a much better picture and that we can actually read about it as well, that would be really reassuring. And I think as a committee we need that.
I think, well, are there any other comments? No, okay, I'll make some comments then. I think we're at where we're at. My view, when I first read the report from Audit Wales, was this is absolutely appalling. I may have said it before, it's not just the 2019 report, it's actually the 2015 report, because the report actually says implementing recommendation 3 from our 2015 national report is incomplete. So we're nearly 10 years on and actually no one's picked it up, and that's in regards to quite a lot of the recommendations. So there is a big issue there for me, and I agree with Don. Unfortunately, you, Tanya, are picking up this. I'm assured that you're actually putting the resource into it. I'm pleased that there's a task and finish group being set up. I'm sure that the point which Councillor Reynolds made is that you will look at the 15 report, you'll look at the 19 report, you'll look at the 24 report, even though they reiterate and repeat some things, to ensure all those recommendations that were raised are dealt with, so that we're assured that if Audit Wales come back again, we can satisfy Audit Wales. We're not here just to satisfy Audit Wales, okay? We're here to satisfy the citizens of Newport. If we can satisfy Audit Wales as part of that process, then marvellous. But we need to get this procedure and policies in place. You've set yourself a challenging target, as I've said, and I thank you for the update. But clearly, in regards to moving forward, if we can have that written report in on the, I think it's the 25th of, is it the 25th of January? Oh, sorry, I'm here. 30th of January, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong place. That would be great, and obviously I'm sure that you'll be in a far better place to give us that assurance at that time. Again, we're on a journey here, aren't we, to get it in place, and there's a huge task to do that. I shouldn't imagine that 30th of January will be the final appearance here, but we will look forward to receiving your report in regards to where you're at, what has happened and what has been put in place. And as I said, it's not just, I know you're the lead director for this, but I would want some input from education, as Rhys has said. I would like some input from Democratic Services in regards to the members and why they've not been chased in regards to their training, because again, whether the figure is right in here or not, it says 26 out of 51 members have completed the training. You know, that means there are 25 out there who haven't. And I think, again, there needs to be maybe an email or a letter to the appropriate group leaders to say, can you pick this up? Because it is important. So I look forward to you coming back. It's not, my view is not what's going on now about this. We're at where we're at. You are dealing with it. And I think we just need to get those reports in place in January to see where we're at and what targets you've hit by that time. Okay, so the recommendation, I think, is note the report and obviously the management response that you've carried out, and B, that you provide a written report to the committee on progress to date at the 30th of January 25 committee. Someone prepared to move, please? Thank you, Norma. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, John. Anyone against? No, thank you very much. If you'd like to leave, you're quite welcome to stay, but if you want to leave, please do so. And can you thank your team for working so hard to date? Because again, this is a big task. So thank you very much. Item 6, the Corporate Risk Register, Quarter 2. Tracy or Paul?
Thank you, Chair. So this is the risk register at the end of the 30th of September. Not many changes from the Quarter 1 risk register. Actually, the role of Governance and Audit Committee is to ensure that procedures are in place to manage the risks, and the comments of the committee will be taken forward to Cabinet in the next 2 weeks. If I can ask Paul to give any details.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to say to the committee, since Quarter 1, we still have 8 severe risks on the Corporate Risk Register and 7 major risks on the Corporate Risk Register, as Tracy iterated. We haven't seen any changes in relation to risk score changes or any new or risks leaving the Corporate Risk Register. So at this stage, we're just happy to take comments and questions from the committee.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Paul. Any questions from anyone? Oh, a light evening tonight. No questions. Any comments? Must be near Christmas. No? Okay, so you see the recommendation. that, I think we note the contents of the report, and at this current moment in time, we provide no comments or recommendations to Cabinet. Someone prepared to move, please. Thank you, Jason. Seconder, John. Thank you. Anyone against? No. That's the first time ever you've had a light run. Okay, next item on the report is the annual report on compliments, comments and complaints. Mark.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm going to do a brief introduction and then I'm going to hand over to Sarah McCool, who's the new complaints manager. So we have, as a council, a statutory requirement to process complaints in line with our customer feedback policy and also in line with the All Wales Social Services complaint handling process. So all our complaints are logged in line with the Public Services Ombudsman for Wales, All Wales Model Complaints Policy, which we adopted a few years ago. I think it's important to say that we value customer feedback. We had an interesting conversation at our corporate management team earlier in the week. We've got to be more mindful of calling it feedback and not talking just about complaints. So just to mention that up front. But we do use that feedback to try and ensure some good outcomes, and the more complaints we record, the more ability we have to kind of change how we do things. So we talked about some changes in terms of kind of work we've done to engage with services so they're more familiar with the complaints policy, and Sarah will touch on that. So, you know, not having any complaint is not necessarily indicating good service, and having an increase in complaints is not necessarily reflecting a bad service. This is the 4th annual report we've done, and Sarah will talk through some of the kind of headline statistics. Obviously, we're happy to answer questions. We believe it shows good progress against our kind of previous action plan, and actually, as we're now in November, about the kind of action plan for this year. But we recognise there's further work to do and improvements to make, but we feel making good progress in that regard. So I'll hand over to Sarah now, who will go through some of the details, and obviously then we'll subsequently answer your questions.
Thanks, Mark. So compliments, we've had 135 compliments across the year. 92 of those are corporate, 43 were for social services. Corporate compliments decreased by 13%, while social services saw a 19% increase, and most corporate compliments were linked to environment and public protection, specifically waste and cleansing teams. In regards to comments, we received 290, and that saw an 89% decrease from the previous year. This was due to process improvements, and the reduction can be attributed to clearer categorisation of feedback and streamlined processes, for example, directing service requests directly to appropriate teams. The majority of the comments that we received were related to waste and cleansing, accounting for 112 out of the 290 received, and these largely reflected dissatisfaction with changes to waste collection frequency, which was implemented in April of 23. In regards to complaints, we received 465 complaints, of which 437 were corporate and 28 were for social services. Corporate complaints saw a 13% increase at stage 1 and 11% increase at stage 2. This was due to improved recording processes, and 88% of corporate complaints were resolved at stage 1. Social services complaints similarly saw a 10% increase at stage 1 and a 40% increase at stage 2. However, to note, there are low volumes considered in regards to those social services complaints. Key areas for complaints were with waste and cleansing, accounting for 44% of those, and they were attributed to dissatisfaction with the new collection schedules. 9% were for highways regarding complaints for potholes and road conditions, and 8% were linked to customer services around concerns about waiting times and online reporting. We also receive a report from the Public Service Ombudsman for Wales, and our intervention rate improved for the year to 10%, which was down from 17% in 2022-23. Target rate for that is ideally under 14%. and of 52 complaints referred to the Ombudsman, only 5 required council action. So key improvements that we achieved across the year, we enhanced systems and reporting. So we developed the My Council or MCS system, which included a complaints dashboard where we improved data analysis and insight. This improved our recording capabilities, which allows for better feedback categorisation and trend identification. We streamlined feedback processes, and we've refined complaint submission processes, which has reduced misclassified service requests and shortened response times for issues like waste-related queries. We've improved training and awareness across the council. We've trained over 100 staff on complaint handling to standardise practices and address under-reporting. And we also had specialised training for councillors and residential staff to align their processes with the revised customer feedback policy. We've reviewed and updated the unacceptable actions by customers policy to ensure proportionate responses to challenging interactions. And we've aligned that complaint handling procedures with the Public Service Ombudsman for Wales standards, and that's contributing to a lower intervention rate. We do, however, have further planned improvements for this year. We want to further enhance our reporting and insight by regularly reporting of complaints data to stakeholders and inclusion in performance reviews to better inform decision making. And we've already had a 6-month review of data, which has been with the CMT this week for Q1 and Q2 already of this year. We want to strengthen the training and culture across the council with targeted training across service areas to promote ownership and timely resolution of complaints. And we want to improve our customer engagement to increase accessibility to the complaints process for customers with limited online access, and develop campaigns to encourage customers to provide positive feedback alongside complaints reporting. We're going to finalise and roll out the updated and acceptable actions of customers policy and ensure stakeholders are informed and trained. We have been to CMT twice with this, and it's now with the leader for approval. And we're working quite closely with the Customer Contact Review to integrate best practices into their service improvements, and we'll continue to analyse recurring issues to drive proactive change. So I hope you'll see this demonstrates the Council's ongoing commitment to transparency, responsiveness and improved service delivery.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
Ready for questions?
I am.
Okay, are there any questions? Jason.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Within the report, where you've got it's the waste. There's always seems to be getting problems with waste and everything else. What sort of waste issues are we talking about? Is it miscollections or just general waste? And if so, do your complaints managers talk to waste savers regarding this as well? Because as councillors, we do get a lot of complaints saying that the bins are not collected, they've missed us. You know, when I talk to some of the boys on the truck, they do a job and knock. They sort of start and get it done quickly and then they go home. You know, if this is something that needs to be addressed, if there's a waste collections that are being missed, you know, somebody needs to be accountable for why they're being missed and also what is happening with the collections.
Yeah, so I can answer that. I do have a regular monthly meeting with our waste and waste savers colleagues where we do discuss volumes of complaints and looking at the issues behind that. And actually, they've been really insightful for myself that actually when you look at the volume of complaints that they do receive, and specifically around miscollections, in regards to the interactions that they have on a monthly basis, it actually accounts for 0.7% miscollection rate. And I think it's just to do with the volume of interactions that they have on a weekly basis. You know, everybody has contact with them every week, once a week. And it can be attributed to sheer volume of the interactions that they have, rather than, you know, I would expect to see a larger volume of complaints if there was a real issue there.
And just to add to that, in terms of we report on compliments as well, and there are more compliments about the waste service than there are about any other service, yeah, for the same reason.
Yeah, it's such a weird thing, because as soon as I ring them up in the morning on a Wednesday morning, the first thing comes out of their mouth is, "Hello, Councillor Jordan, where's the problem, and we'll sort it out. It's every sort of week I get it. You know, I'm going to tell him nothing on the phone. He says, what we've missed. You know, and that's mostly every week I report it as well.
I think, obviously, if there are continuing issues around that, then again, it's a matter for scrutiny to look at. But clearly, what's been said by the officer is that, you know, in percentage terms, it's a minimal percent. And I think as long as you get that feedback, and as the, you know, community ambassador for the council, then, you know, you need the right information to go back to your constituent to tell them what's happened. Clearly, they may not be satisfied, but the issue is that's the problem with complaints. Not everyone is satisfied with the response you give them, but, you know, clearly the council are doing its very best in what it does, given a, you know, very small percentage. Councillor Reynolds?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, my sort of question is a comment rather than a question, to be honest. Again, to do with the figures. You just touched on it, actually, because two things struck me when I was looking at the figures. One that didn't surprise me in the slightest, which was the order of magnitude difference between the number of compliments received and the number of complaints received. That's not shocking, I'm sure, not to anybody. But what did surprise me was how low the numbers seem to be in terms of the overall interactions that Newport Council Services have with the residents. You know, we're talking thousands and thousands of interactions, and relatively few interactions back, if you like, so whether it's compliments or complaints. So, in a way, that's quite pleasing. The question I've got really, I suppose, is to do with the way we communicate with residents. Our human nature being what it is, if we've got a complaint to make, we will, I know I will, we'll go out of our way to find a way of complaining, and if that means going into the website and going through 5 or 6 pages, then most of us are quite prepared to do that if we're annoyed about something. In terms of compliments, if it's not easy to do, most people won't bother. I'm just wondering, have we got any plans to sort of make things easier for people to just get back to us, whether it's with compliments or complaints, really, but particularly compliments?
Chair, I think I'll respond to the comment, if that's all right, and I'll hand over to the team about the plans. I think, because we've talked, when we had Public Services Ombudsman in here with committee in a pre-meeting, we talked about this. You know, and I think you will see it from what Sarah and Mark have said, and also from the report. We want more feedback. We want more compliments, complaints, comments. We want as much of that as possible, because that helps us change the way we deliver services and get better at them. So, you know, there is very much an open door here, and we're trying to make it as easy as possible to do that. So, you know, the higher that figure gets, the better. And you will see, I think you see it year on year, that is just increasing for us. So, you know, we just need to make that as much as possible. It is a fraction, I suspect, of, you know, what people's views actually are, but, you know, we just need to make it as easy as possible. But I'll hand over to Tracy and the team then around a bit part of that.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Councillor. It's a really good point about how we're capturing and making sure people give the opportunity to feedback. So there's a number of plans about promoting how you log a complaint and how you log a compliment. But if I just talk about compliments specifically, I think we've also got a problem internally within the council. Lots of places do, about how we record that. So if you're a member of staff and someone makes a complaint, you know it's a complaint, you register it straight away. If someone gives a compliment for service, whether that be a member of the public, anyone else, it's not necessarily recorded in the same way, and we really want to do some work around that, because that is equally important feedback. And we've got some promotional material ready to go that Sarah's produced to kind of, for residents, but also for ourselves to record that appropriately as well, because it's no good us having more of that feedback and it not being appropriately recorded either. So we look forward to being able to report that on that next year.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Tracy. I just reiterate the point Tracy just made about the capturing of data. I think that's a good point, actually, that sometimes the compliments are there, they're just not necessarily being captured. So, yeah, but thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? Norma?
Okay, thank you. I did find it a very good detailed report, and I thought it was full of useful information. You know, it gave me a good understanding of the nature of the complaints and what gives rise to them, so I thought that was excellent. And I thought it was pleasing to see the compliments to the waste and cleaning team. Never mind the bin men. The thing that struck me about it was the issue around marginalised communities, because if you actually look at the generators of the complaints, they're all white, most of them middle-aged or old, despite only 85.5% of the population in Newport is actually white. So, you know, you've got quite a high proportion of BAME sort of population. So it's really how we can engage and get younger people and people from marginalised communities. I also looked, and I'm not familiar with your wards, obviously, and so I didn't know what the socio-economic characters were of the various wards, but I thought that was quite fascinating looking at that, because what I picked up from the few wards that I know of is that the more disadvantaged, the more deprived wards weren't complaining as much as those that were quite well off. So I think there's an issue there around marginalised communities that I think we should be addressing and looking at. I was disappointed that only 43% of the Ombudsman's, sorry, Public Services Ombudsman for Wales is 23-24 recommendations. I think there were 10 of them that, you know, only 43% have been implemented. I would like a report back to the committee on the 24-25 actions, because I noticed all the improvement actions, they're very clear there, but I haven't got a feeling about how these are monitored and what's been achieved to date. So I think it would be quite good if we got a report back to the committee on it, because I got a feeling here, you know, from what I read, that it's a good area of work, it's progressing well, but I think I'd like further assurance, really.
Any?
I've got no issue with kind of providing updates as long as that's appropriate in the kind of the remit of the committee, which I'm sure it is. So I'm sure that's fine. In relation to the 43%, we're also disappointed, and just to clarify some of that detail. So in those instances that were referred to the Ombudsman, we had responded to the customer, but we hadn't informed the Ombudsman accordingly. So that is still not the full picture, and that's not what so we are disappointed with that as well. Not that it's a reason or an excuse, but we weren't made aware of that kind of statistic being used until after the event. Again, that doesn't excuse any of it. We're more aware of it now, and I think the Ombudsman recognised that they probably could have communicated that better. But yes, you know, we appreciate that. We could have done better on those. Should have done better.
Don?
Comment and a question, okay, combined, so bear with me. First of all, as a Newport resident, really appreciate the effort the council make trying to get feedback from people in all sorts of different ways, and doing that. Because I strongly believe that the wording that you've put in there, the number of complaints, or compliments or whatever, if they're high, don't indicate poor services, and equally the thing is true, but you want feedback. Now, reading all the figures, it's just stats in some respects, unless it can be compared year on year on year, so we're seeing what the trends are. So my question is, how far off are we having a stable platform when the year-on-year figures are actually really going to mean something? Because at the moment, to me, they don't mean anything.
That's a really good point and a really good question. I think we're close. I wouldn't say we're necessarily there. I mean, I guess one of the things is there's quite a few variables in this. So, for instance, you know, if we've got an unpopular thing or a poor service at a particular time, that will inflate the number of complaints, and therefore you're not necessarily always comparing like with like. For instance, the difference between last year and this, in terms of there's an increase in the number of complaints, we hope and believe that that is to do with a kind of greater publication of it internally and externally in terms of, you know, we value this feedback. So I think it will always be quite challenging, is my kind of gut reaction. We are creating dashboards in our kind of management information system, which we hope will give us a better insight. It's always going to be a little challenging, is my view, to compare one year with another, kind of with any degree of confidence, but we're certainly trying to do more of that. And I appreciate that there can be an element of there's kind of just numbers. We do treat each individual complaint on its own merits, and in a sense that's important in its own right, as you know, the numbers are, you know, a part of that. We're trying to get those kind of messages across. As Sarah says, she meets with colleagues across services to try and get those messages across as we kind of as we go through the year. I think it's quite difficult. I don't think we're far away, but you know, we're not there yet. I think I agree.
Before I come back, I think Tracy wants to say something.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Members of the committee have previously seen the MI Hub system that we use, so I can reference that about risk, and we're Mark and Sarah are working with the team there on whether we can do something similar with complaints to get that in a more consistent, and even if sometimes the data isn't telling us anything, if we don't see it side by side, we can't work that out. I just wanted to come back. I don't think we answered the question about other communities and seldom heard from communities, or whatever we call that. I mean, I'm also responsible for engagement. It is common to hear from similar groups of people and similar wards, as I'm sure you'll know statistically. But I think once we've got that general communications out there, we can work with our equalities and community teams to get out there to different groups, rather than always expecting everyone to come to us to get that message out there. That is challenging, generally speaking. I don't want to be too subjective about this, but people who are living more difficult lives often have better things to do than to complain about things. You know, do you know what I mean? And those of us who are more privileged perhaps spend more time feeding back and engaging. But that said, I think we've got some good work to do, and we've got some great groups we can use. And particularly, I was pleased you referenced, I think you referenced younger people, Norma, which I think is really important. And there's lots of ways we can try and engage with younger people, and that's definitely something we want to achieve, and will be consistent with our values as a council.
Chair, just to come back, I mean, I agree with everything you say there, and I realise it's difficult. But I was reading some audit papers for another committee, wasn't it, because the authority committee that I'm on, only last night, and actually they had been quite successful at doing it, and it was good to actually see it. And I think we have to try. Yeah, we have to try. Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry, any other questions? No, I've got a couple of questions. The first one is, obviously, we had 437 complaints last year, and you've set out sort of the majority, which were based in cleansing, highways, customer services, but there are still some big numbers in the list in regards to cemeteries and crematoria, income and tax, and that. The question I'd like to ask is, great, we've got all the data, but so what? And what do we learn from that information we've got? And how has a service changed as a result of receiving, whether it's 193 complaints or 34 complaints or 10? How has the service changed, if it has changed? So the issue about potholes, we've got 40 complaints, 9% of complaint, majority of complaints reporting potholes, condition of roads. So what have we learned from that, and what has been done? Because the statement is there, But how have you addressed that? How has the directorate addressed that complaint? You know, because if they're potholes, then obviously it's a financial issue to start with. Have you got enough money to do it? Is it in the programme of repair of the road or whatever? Is it just a pothole repair or whatever? So what lessons have we learned by directorate, and what changes have they put in place, if any, as a result of receiving the complaint? I think the report needs to raise that next year if we can, just to give some examples to demonstrate. You know, we've got all these complaints. This is how Newport has changed its way of doing things.
Okay.
Sorry, I answered your question. You know, I think that's what that's what's required, really.
And going back to Councillor's question earlier in relation to the insight, you know, we are trying to develop more insight, and we appreciate we need to kind of get more into that. I think one of the so there's a couple of ways we've got it already. So each individual complaint, we do look at it as own merits in that sense. So if there's things that could be improved as part of that, and sometimes the communication and the like, then we would expect the service to take that on board at that point. The bigger picture stuff, we now, as Sarah mentioned, we go to corporate management team on a 6-monthly basis. So we will be talking about these things in more detail, as Tracy also mentioned, in terms of the MI Hub system. We will be exposing all the complaints quarterly for each service. So again, we will be having conversations in relation to kind of themes and trends and the like. So we're probably getting to the point whereas our data wasn't brilliant a few years ago, the data now is pretty good, and now we're in a position to actually do more about it, and that's the kind of stage we're at now. So a big thing now is engagement with kind of services, and I guess the other point just to make as well as this is obviously we're not always going to satisfy people, and people will always complain, and some of it may be about a policy decision or something they kind of just don't like, sorry. Oh, yeah. Sorry.
I think that's a really good point, Chair, and I think that what we've been talking about is, and we talked about it in CMT the other day, didn't we? This is really valuable intelligence for the organisation. How do you maximise that? Some things, as Mark was saying, so potholes, well, the assessment did is, are we delivering those services to our highways asset management plan? And if we are, somebody might not like that, but that is the policy set outlined by council. So, you know, same as three weekly bin collections, etc. You need to kind of weed that step out within the midst of it there, and that's some really important intelligence about, you know, how we're delivering services and the perception of those services for the people in Newport. So, you know, that's the stuff we need to focus on. So I suppose the refining this, so actually we're bringing back and saying, and the so what, and this is what we've done as a result of it, I think is really important. Just one of the examples, obviously India refers to, and you just mentioned then, complaints around customer services. Well, as a result of those complaints, we've got a significant transformation programme in place now, which is about redesigning the way we do our customer interface, which I'm working with Myron and a team on, around, you know, making that significantly better. So it does make it, you know, people telling us and feeding back does make a difference to the way we deliver things, but we need to articulate that within this. Yeah.
That's the point. You need to get that in a report, you know, because again, people will complain constantly about your services, and quite rightly so. You will respond to those which are, against policy or whatever, and you know, people are never going to be satisfied with that. But ultimately, those real changes you've made need to be highlighted, and I think that's the point, as you said, Rhys, I'm trying to get to there. The other point was, and I think Norma picked it up, which came out of the Public Service Ombudsman report, in regards to the number of recommendations made. Number of recommendations falling due in 23-24, and the 43% complied with. In the narrative, now I don't know whether that's narrative from you or the Public Service Ombudsman letter, because you don't attach the Public Service Ombudsman letter, and neither is it a background paper, so I don't know where we find that. But in the narrative it says 7 recommendations were due, 43% were complied with in the timescale agreed. The remainder were complied with, but outside the timescale agreed, or remain outstanding as at the 9th of April 2024. Well, we're now at the 28th of November, so can someone just give me an assurance that those matters have been dealt with by now?
Yes. It's a short answer, yes, they've all been dealt with.
Right.
We hadn't, the 43% was what we'd informed the Ombudsman about at that point in time. But yes, they were all dealt with the kind of customers, and we've subsequently informed the Ombudsman.
So is that narrative from the Public Service Ombudsman, or is that your narrative?
That's directly from the Ombudsman's letter.
Right. Okay. So in reality, I think someone just needs to do a covering report to pick up some of these issues, because if you've dealt with them, it paints a bad picture still for me. And I think if you've dealt with them, say you've dealt with them, and then we're assured that, well done, thank you very much. It's an issue I've raised this afternoon in this morning, another committee, where the figures were less, and they're going to report back as to what the issues are. But it's great to hear, so thank you for that. Okay, are there any other questions? No? Any comments? No? I've just got to say is we're in a far better position now than we were previously. And again, that's credit to your team and your officers. So thank you very much for getting us. Again, as I said, we're still on a journey. And music to my ears when Reece said, we want more complaints. Okay, music to my ears. And the issue, as you know, which I will always raise, is where are councillor complaints recorded? Because Jason raised it to say, I get complaints daily. So where are those recorded? Because they're not here. And I know I raised it with the Ombudsman, and the Ombudsman wasn't concerned about it. But every authority, in my view, under-record complaints. And I keep saying it, if councillors get 4 complaints a day over 200 days, there'll be 20,000 complaints in here. And I think that's the information we need. And I don't think it's a bad place to be, because as Reece said, and I think you would agree, Tracy, you can learn from those, and you can identify the areas where there are real challenges in the service delivery. So whether you can record councillor complaints and compliments in one place, I think is something to be looked at. Whether you want to do it or not, as I said, the Ombudsman don't seem to be too concerned about it. But it concerns me about under-recording, and because a complaint is made to a councillor, it will, we can all define what a complaint is or what it isn't, and we can discuss that till the cows come on. But I think it needs to be recorded somewhere so we get a true picture in an authority. Whether Newport can do it, if Newport can do it, then I can use it as an exemplar wherever else I go then. But I think they are under-recorded on occasions, and I think we don't need to rest on our laurels, but it also goes with compliments as well, because I don't think sometimes councils actually promote themselves well enough. Everyone wants to complain about what you're not doing, but officers of the council and the council do some superb work, and that's never picked up out there. You've got some minimal numbers here, but, again, they need to be picked up. So, music to my ears, Reece. Oh, sorry, John. No, we're on comments now, mind, so I'm not allowing any questions. John.
No, thank you, Chair. It is a comment, actually. It's a comment about your comment. I totally understand what you're saying there, Chair, and I do agree to a certain extent, but I do have a couple of concerns with what you're saying as well, to be honest, because as councillors, we get so many emails and even verbal comments every day. I think having to resend those on a constant basis would just be just a huge amount of work on top of what we already do. But also, it's just how you define a complaint. I mean, if somebody contacts me just to report that something needs fixing, or report that there's, I don't know, a light out maybe, or that maybe in the pothole, is that a complaint? So where do you draw the line? And I think that would create a lot more admin and problems than it actually solves. But maybe it's a discussion for another place and another day, I don't know. But I don't think it's quite as straightforward as maybe you're making out there, Chair.
Yeah,
Thanks for that.
I think we need to get into the definition is what is a complaint and the define of a complaint. And some of the issues you raise are operational service matters. Really, it's not a complaint. There's a street light out. Is that a complaint? You know, I don't know. But again, that's something the officers can look at when dealing with the policy and giving sort of an aid memoir out to members to say, look, these are the things you need to record as a complaint, and these are the things you can deal with as, you know, as part of your normal general day work as an elected member. So I think, you know, that can be resolved, in my view, fairly straightforwardly. Jason?
Yeah, it's like the comment is, you know, we get complaints virtually every day, but we try not to put the onus back on the tenant. We say, have you tried this? Have you tried that? You know, many of them don't want to phone the council, but we always try to direct them first to go down that road to complain first. You know, instead of us coming from us all the time, we sort of try and let them do it and see if they do it. You know, if it does, it does. And 9 times 10, nobody come back and say, oh, we've tried and we can't do it. So we try to educate the residents. You know, you need to be doing this. You can do it, not just us.
Yeah.
You know, and we tell them that as well. So, and we try to educate them as well. You know, to do it before it comes to us. Like John said, we can be bombarded every day, and we can put emails in every day. But if we can get the residents, you know, on board and say, you know, have you tried this? Have you tried that? It saves us a little bit of work as well as, you know, but it gives the residents a bit of, you know, onus on themselves to report themselves as well.
Yeah, and I think, you know, again, I had this discussion because I had a similar report this morning. What one of the elected members asked was whether an aid memoir could be sort of provided in a bullet point list to say to the resident, which you could always, when you speak to them, to say, look, if you want to make a formal complaint, here's the email address, it's over to you. And then, you know, if they say, well, I put my complaint in, here's stage 1, here's stage 2, or whatever. So it assists members as well. But I'm just raising the issue, in reality, that my view, and it always has been my view, that complaints are under-recorded. Tracy?
I'm just going to say noted to that comment, Chair. I think there are some simple things we can do, such as councillors being more aware about recording complaints, and compliments so important. But some of that is much harder to get to, but there are some simple things we can do, and we'll look at that as a team. Thank you.
Good. If there are no other comments then, if we go to the recommendations, obviously we note the contents of the report regarding the process and performance of the Council's compliments, comments and complaints annual report for 23-24, and obviously you can pick up, it says to make any recommendations for improvement, and I think there are some issues and areas you can pick up from the discussion and debate. Is that okay? Yeah. Someone prepared to move? Thank you, Don. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Jason. Anyone against? No, thank you. Item 8 then on the report, because it isn't on the report now, is it? Because it was the annual statement of accounts. Thank you very much, both. Thanks for what you've been doing. Sorry, I'm trying to get the papers now. Yeah. My apologies. Right, we're on agenda item 10 now, aren't we? Because the others have been deferred. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Half-yearly Treasury Management Report. Item 10. Laura?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So this
sorry, can I just say, in regards to the final statement of accounts and the audit record, presumably they're going to come, we've been discussing, because there's been some delay in regards to the statement of accounts, we are going to convene a special meeting to sign those off, because obviously they do need to be signed off by this committee, and expect a meeting shortly in December, second week or possibly of December. Yeah, if you could. I'm not here next week, but otherwise Don will take control. So, yeah, sorry, that's the reason why they're not on the agenda. Sorry, Laura, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Thank you, Chair. So this report is to inform the committee of the Treasury activities undertaken within the first half of the financial year, and it updates the committee on the position in relation to the Treasury Management Prudential Indicators as at September 2024. So the main activity being that the Council took out 3 temporary loans totalling £15 million and 1 long-term loan totalling £10 million. There was a very short window of time when the interest rates dipped, so we took advantage of this and undertook some early borrowing. So we know that the Council has a clear need to borrow within the 24-25 financial year, as we have some large loans maturing at the end of the year that need to be refinanced, and our capacity to internally borrow is reducing as expected, as the reserves are being utilised in line with their intended use. So this, coupled with the fact that we have an increase in the capital financing requirement as a result of the Council's capital programme, we believe that we are likely going to have to borrow some more again this financial year, but this will be in line with our strategy and in line with any advice from our Treasury advisors. So despite taking out £25 million worth of borrowing, our net borrowing requirement actually decreased in the first half of the year from 123.2 million to 115.4. And this is because we did have some small PWLB loans that matured that we did not need to refinance, and a number of our loans now are EIPs. And then because we undertook some early borrowing, we were able to reinvest that money in the short term, meaning that we also minimised or avoided any cost to carry. So this meant that our investments were a lot higher in this point of the year compared to in March. So our investments as at the end of September were 41.8 million when compared to 13.9 million in March 24. So the report also confirms that the Council's prudential indicators have been adhered to, with the exception of one. And the PI that has not been adhered to is the percentage of the Council's capital financing budget of its net budget. So this has arisen due to a technical accounting aspect associated with this indicator, and it has no financial cost or impact. The capital financing budget is inclusive of any annual lease costs, and as they've currently changed in terms of the accounting treatment, they are now classed as capital financing costs, not any revenue costs. So this is a change in the accounting for the lease and does not represent an additional cost to the Council. So this breach, therefore, does not represent a significant financial impact and will be reported as part of this report to Council. So you're happy to take any comments or questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Have we got any questions? Norma?
2 questions. One quite simple one. I think I've asked this before. But what is our return, if any, on directly owned property of 10.6 million? And the second one is, we're getting into a very difficult financial position now, and I don't want to sort of move on to, the next item, which is about financial sustainability. But we've been borrowing from other local authorities. So what's the likelihood? Well, I would imagine the likelihood of that is getting less and less. And what impact will that have on the resources of the Council?
So in terms of your first question, our return on investment, specifically on properties, was it? This is in relation to, I would have to check that, apologies. I don't know the actual return that we would get, so I would have to check that. In terms of your second question, the fact that we are borrowing from local authorities, that tends to be on a short-term basis. Yeah. Because we know that the authority does need to borrow on the long term, we are borrowing more from the PWLB. So we tend to borrow from local authorities to cover short-term cash flows. So we do expect that to be there, because it will be just in relation to cash flows at certain points of the years. But in relation to our capital programme and needing to increase our borrowing requirement as a result of that, and our reducing reserves, we'll be looking to do more long-term. But we will, again, in line with our Treasury advisors, we will be looking, we will take all of that under consideration and any advice as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions? Can I just ask a question in regards to the point that you've just made there in regards to short-term borrowing from other local authorities? And I know you've got Treasury Management advisors. Has there been any view taken on authorities which are near to or actually issued their Section 114 notice where they're, you know, financially unstable? Does the council look at those issues and has it received any advice from the Treasury Management consultants in regards to taking out loans or taking loans from those authorities?
We get regular updates from our Treasury advisors as a result of that, and they send that out usually monthly, and our Treasury Management team updates a central register of any authorities that we feel we shouldn't be either borrowing from or lending to, and that's updated regularly in line with advice.
Has Newport got any loans, or have they got any loans, or have they invested in any of those authorities? Have you got any outstanding where the authority is at risk?
No.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? No? Any comments? No? Okay, see the recommendation that we note the report on Treasury Management activities during the first half year period from 24-25 and obviously there is little feedback, but Nora has made the point in regards to the return on investment in properties, so if that could actually be provided to members, then that would be great. Okay, someone proposed the recommendation. Thank you, Don. Can I have a seconder? Thank you. Oh, sorry, John, I didn't see your hand. It may have been a bit late.
No problem.
Were you seconded?
I was, if nobody else has, yes, no problem.
Oh, lovely. Thank you very much. Anyone against? Nope. Okay, thank you for that, Laura. Next item is the Newport City Council Financial Sustainability Report, pages 135 to 158. Is Audit Wales taking this, or? Yeah. Is it you, Beth, or Philippa, or?
Yeah,
where?
so my colleague Philippa will introduce the report and then take any questions, Chair, if that's okay.
Yeah, carry on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bethan, and thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody. Just to introduce myself for those I haven't previously met, I'm an audit lead in Audit Wales, and I worked as the day-to-day lead on this project. So as you've got the report yourself within the committee papers, I just wanted to provide some background on this work and also highlight some key points. This work has been done as a follow-up to financial sustainability work done by Audit Wales in previous years. Both our previous work and this year's work has been carried out across all 22 councils. The scope of this work was developed in consultation with the Society of Welsh Treasurers, who provided feedback on the scope, and this helped us refine the questions we used to frame this work. So this is a performance audit piece of work, but we did work in conjunction with financial audit colleagues just to make sure our work had that coverage across both disciplines and to make sure that our findings were consistent with our financial audit colleagues' knowledge and experience of the council. So the overall question we wanted to answer for this work is, does the council have proper arrangements to support its financial sustainability? And we answered this question in the report by looking at three key aspects of these arrangements. Firstly, whether the council's got a strategic approach to support its financial sustainability. So in other words, does it have a plan in place to manage the current financial challenges and close the forecast funding gap? So what we found is the council has got really strong financial management of its current position. However, it doesn't yet have a fully developed plan to close its funding gap in the medium and long term. Now, just for some context, Newport Council is not alone in this. In fact, none of the councils in Wales, as of yet, have a fully developed plan to address their funding gap. We will be setting this out in our national report on financial sustainability in councils, which is due to be published imminently, and that covers themes that have emerged from across the 22 local authorities we've looked at. We also recognise the difficult context in which this and other councils in Wales have been operating for many years, and we set this out in the introduction to this report. But ultimately, as I said, we found the financial management within the council is strong, which provides a really good foundation for the future planning process. So we also looked at the extent to which the council has got a clear understanding of its current financial position. So this is a really strong area for Newport Council. We found the council has a robust understanding of its demands and pressures, and it uses reasonable assumptions to model its anticipated financial position over the coming years, and it's got a good record of coming in on budget in previous years. And finally, we looked at arrangements for reporting and oversight of the council's financial sustainability. So here we found the council's got strong reporting arrangements around its financial position and the risks to its financial sustainability. Officers report regularly and clearly to members, and this allows members to make fully informed decisions around transforming services in a way that will deliver for Newport's people and communities, but which will be financially sustainable going forward. So our overall conclusion, taking into account those three aspects, is that Newport City Council has sound financial arrangements to support its financial sustainability, including a developing transformation plan and effective oversight arrangements, but the Council has not yet fully identified how it will close its budget gap over the medium and long term. So from this report, we only have one recommendation for the Council, and that is the Council should improve its long-term planning to determine how it will address its funding gap in the longer term to secure its future financial sustainability. And that's everything I wanted to cover on that report, so I'm happy to take any questions or comments. Thank you, diolch.
Thank you for that. Did you want any comments on it? No?
No particular comments, Chair. I suppose it's a positive report for this council. That recommendation is one you'll probably see on every council's report. I understand why it's there and why it needs to be there. It is a very difficult recommendation to respond to for two reasons. One is because the scale of the challenge is huge, and it comes on the back of many years of similar challenges. But first and foremost, I think, or secondly, but foremost, until we get long-term financial settlements, it will be very difficult for any council to be able to develop a long-term proposal for saving money, because you'll always be wondering if your problem is as big as you think it is, or will there be money that comes down to you at some point, which has been, our kind of experience over the years. I think that is the UK government has announced that it will give the Welsh government a 2-year financial settlement in the spring budget. We hope that Welsh government will be able to then give us a 2-year settlement, and that will help in that respect. But of course, the scale of the challenge is still significant. But I accept and understand the recommendation. It's fair. It's appropriate.
Thanks, Myron. Are there any questions? John?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Philippa, for that report. And actually, Myron is just, he's almost said word for word what I wanted to ask. But there is one other point as well. First of all, in terms of closing the funding gap, you said, Philippa, that is the main recommendation from this report. I was wondering whether maybe you could provide a bit more detail on exactly what you would be looking. I'm sure Myron probably got a good idea anyway. But could you give us, sort of, lay people a little bit more detail of what you would be looking for to do that? Particularly bearing in mind that the other point I was going to make, but Myron's already said it, but the funding streams are unknown year on year at the moment. I can't see how plans to close long-term plans to close a funding gap, how that can be done when you don't know what's coming in year on year. And then my second question then is, I suppose it's linked to it really. There is a comment in your report about the council expectation to identify savings beyond the annual budget setting process. And I suppose that is linked to the same thing really. Could you maybe expand a bit on what's expected there really in terms of identifying those savings beyond the budget setting process, because we don't know what money's coming in year on year. Although I do appreciate that you're going to look at certain services and say, well, we can make savings there, or we can make efficiency improvements in certain areas. So I can understand how that can be done on a general way. But yeah, if you could give me a bit more detail about that, that would be really appreciated. Thank you.
Philippa?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. So the first part of your question was around how we would recommend to close the funding gap. I would say that that's not really for us to answer, because ultimately it's up to each council, which is very familiar with its own demands and pressures and its services and the needs of its communities. So it's for each individual council to decide what's best and how to go about closing its funding gap. I will say that in our national report, as I said, which will be published imminently, we will be sharing practice from other councils, which may give an indication of some potential options to take. And secondly, the question was around budget savings. Again, I think that has to be for each individual council to decide. But what I will say, I think the point we're really trying to emphasise at this point is we are at a point now where these difficult decisions do have to be made, unfortunately, given the current financial situation.
Right, thanks for that. I mean, I had a feeling that was probably going to be the answer, to be honest. And like I said, when I asked the question, I'm sure Marion has already got some ideas anyway in terms of what is expected, and the heads of service as well, I'm sure. But I just wondered what your perspective was on it. But thanks very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, John. Myron, did you just want to comment on that?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So, as I said, the recommendation is not unexpected. When you have an unbalanced medium-term financial plan, it's an obvious recommendation, and I accept that. And now then, so in answer to your question, Councillor Reynolds, what we would seek to do is to have a balanced medium-term financial plan. We have a 3-year financial plan, which is the following year plus the next 2 years afterwards, and this recommendation would be met by having a balanced medium-term financial plan. Easier said than done, as I've already explained. And we need to develop the Council's transformation programme and to understand what the financial impact of that is going to be, if that is possible. There are a number of projects where that isn't possible, but where that is possible, and we should build those into our medium-term plans and develop that plan further to get us closer to that medium-term balanced position. So, I mean, that is how that recommendation would be met. But as I've said, easier said than sort of done.
Yeah. Thank you, Marion. Any other questions?
Thank you, Marion.
Don. No. Okay, if there are no other... Oh, I've just got a quick question, Philippa. How do you define medium-term and long-term?
So going on SIP for guidance, which is what we use to help support some of our audit criteria, it's around medium term is roughly 3 to 5 years, and then long term is beyond that.
For that clarity.
Does that answer the questions?
Yeah, it answers the question, and I'll deal with it in comments shortly. But yeah, thank you very much for that. Comments? Don.
Yeah. The recommendation isn't exactly Einstein, and I find this report quite frustrating because it says a lot of positive stuff, but it would have been far better to have said no council in Wales has got this for the reasons, and it would have made a lot better reading, and that would be a lot more, that would be quite truthful. So I find this really quite frustrating. And then they want, it's not like we've got a magic wand that we can wave and sort this out. And it's pretty obvious there's a problem. So I feel like this report, not not totally impressed, and doing that. And to make the recommendation, oh, okay, that's great, we didn't see that one. And also, it would have been much more transparent to have put that no Welsh council has got this, under control. I think that would have been much more transparent and would have been much more helpful to us as a council and a committee, because they were my first questions I was going to ask that have now turned into a comment, was, is there any other Welsh council that's got this under grips? And that got answered straight away, so that hence the comment.
Philippa?
Thank you very much for that comment, Councillor. I just wanted to reiterate that we will cover what we found in all of the councils in the National Summary Report. Part of what we want to do with this, with the individual Newport report, is get it to you in a timely fashion. And at the time of publication, we were not aware of what was happening in all the other councils. So, just to provide some clarification on that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Philippa. I was going to say, this is at a point in time, and you to do a job which you've set out and done and reported back. And I think Mr. Reid's raised the point, which is quite right. I should imagine there's no authority in Wales that's got a grip to this. They've all in a deficit situation somewhere or other, but the varying amount goes from council to council. Some of them will cripple some of the small councils, whereas some of the bigger councils can deal with it because they've got more reserves and such like. So I think, what Mr. Reid has said is this isn't rocket science in regards, it's what's likely you would have found across all authorities. And I think it's the national report we need to wait and see, because that is important, and obviously that will drive how the matter's dealt with. I think for me, in regards to comments, and I thank you for the clarification and medium to long term, and I think it's picking up Myron's point. In reality, until Welsh Government actually gives a long-term settlement, then local authorities are always going to grapple with this in regards to how they deal with it. And I think the other thing which they're unaware is the issues that come in year. We've just had the announcement from Welsh Government about the 50-day plan to get people out of hospital. But the reality is there's cost for social services and social care. Now, if they didn't think there was a problem previously, there is a problem now, in my view, still. You haven't got enough social workers, you don't have enough occupational therapists, there's no money in the system for disabled facility grants, and even if there is, the amount of work to get through by planning and such like can be 9 to 12 months. So I think there needs to be a reality, and it's an issue I've raised previously. Whilst these reports come to local government, and I know that Welsh Government see them, but they actually need to be told at some stage that what they're imposing on local authorities and others sometimes is not sustainable, because if they make these changes in year, then the only people pick it up at the end of the sausage machine is local government. And that's no complaint against Wales Audit. You do what you need to do, or Audit Wales, sorry. You need to do what you need to do. But there are consequences of some of these issues that they bring into effect. And I think then to ask a local authority to say, well, how are you going to plan for it? It's like pinning jelly to the wall, because you can't deal with it. You can deal with what you know you can deal with, but you can't deal with what you don't know is going to come and bite you. So I think the issue for me is that the issue which Myron's raised about long-term financial settlements is important, whether that be 1 year, 2 year or 3, whatever it may be. At least then the authority can plan with some certainty. But what it also needs to know from Welsh Government, are they going to bring in pieces of legislation for which there is normally no funding, and how they then deal with that? So, austerity's hit local authorities, has hit them for the last 10 years, and whether there's a positive settlement this year is another issue, but it certainly won't be it won't match sort of a balance. It will be always a cut. I'm not likely to get 10% of Welsh Government, are we, or whatever. So I think that's what we need to look at, and hopefully, I would hope that the national report will pick those issues up. I don't want you to comment because I don't think it's been issued yet, is it? So, but I would hope that those issues are picked up because, you know, times are difficult, but Welsh Government also need to know that they're also contributing to some of the pain that local authorities are experiencing. Myriam?
Yeah, Chair, sorry, just another comment which I hope is helpful. Clearly, local government has been subjected to a sustainability report because we are a tax-raising, sovereign, independent body which holds reserves. In the public sector, that is unique, and that is why it is an issue for local governments. This has not been done in the health service or any other parts of the public sector. They are simply the sharp end of national government. So therefore, that's why this report. But what it misses the point is that local government, however, is not independent. It is part of a bigger system, which is national government. You know, for us, because of social services, health as well, we are all part of one big public sector system. But of course, local government sits in a slightly unique financial position, which is why sustainability is an issue and why it's been looked at. So I very much hope that the national report will reflect that this is why we're doing this, but also actually they are part of the wider system and therefore actually subjected to the same issues as the other bits of the public sector, but in a different financial regime, which is very difficult.
Yeah, I think, you know, again, I think you've done what was required, Philippa, in regards to carrying out the exercise in regards to Newport, and I'm sure all your colleagues have done similar in regards to all the other authorities, and I think that's welcome. It may well be that there was inkling somewhere in Welsh Government or to the Auditor General that a local authority in Wales was about to issue a 114 notice and go bankrupt. So, you know, that may be signalling bells somewhere in Welsh Government or somewhere else. And I think the point about health, my view of health is, again, health will always be bailed out. You know, when I was in a local authority, we overspent by £1 million, and we had Audit Wales at the time come in, and they were over us like a rash, and there were major problems. There were health boards in Wales who had overspent by 63 million, and all that was said is, oh, we'll bail you out. Well, you know, I don't think there's parity in the system, but all I'd say is you've done your job, great. Let's see what the national report says, and then hopefully we need to work forward collectively to address those issues. I'm going to end it there, Neely, but Rhys, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Only to say thanks to Philippa and the team at Audit Wales. It is, because we had this conversation, we had the feedback. It's difficult because it is a really positive report about the financial management within Newport, and Myron and the team, they take a huge amount of credit for that as well. It is by and large a really, really positive report with an almost intangible recommendation attached to it, which you know, you can't argue with. It is what it is. So just want to thank Philippa for it, and you know, obviously we'll best foot forward.
Thank you for that, Rhys. And hopefully, Philippa, I was trying to relay the same message. You know, you did the report. What has come out has come out. And if you felt that some of the comments was raised at Audit Wales, then, you know, apologise for that. But again, there's some frustration, as you can appreciate, not only in this authority, but I know in other authorities as well, about, you know, there's an elephant in the room here, and maybe Welsh Government needs to address some of that. But again, thank you and your colleagues for carrying it out. And I think our recommendation would be is that we note the contents of your report and await the await the national report in due course. Someone prepared to move? Thank you, Don. Someone second it? Thank you, Jason. Anyone against? No. Can I say thank you, Philippa? Hopefully they didn't give you too hard a time.
Thank you, Chair, and we welcome all feedback. Thank you.
No, that's okay. Thank you. You can stay if you wish, but if you want to go, you may be at home already. But if you want to leave, then please do so. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the Audit Wales Q2 update. Now, is that you, Bethan, or Helen?
I'm going to kick off with that one, Chair, please, and then hand over to Bethan. So I'll just start off with our Q2 update for our financial audit work. So as can be seen in the table, we have certified the housing benefit claim for 22-23. So that was certified in November. The Gwent Crematorium Joint Committee annual return was certified in October. There has been a postponement to the certification of the annual accounts. So we have completed our work in relation to the accounts. However, the auditors of Newport Transport Limited, so that's the subsidiary company which is consolidated into the group accounts of Newport Council, have not yet completed their audit work. So we are unable to conclude our audit work in total at this point upon the group position. So we anticipate that work will be resolved shortly in order to complete our audit work, and therefore the accounts will be presented for approval alongside our audit accounts report at the next GAC, which is due to be the 30th of January. Moving on then for the update of the certification and grants returns for 23-24. So since writing this update, we have certified the teachers' pension, the NNDR return, non-domestic rates return, and the teachers' pension return is due to be certified tomorrow. So that only leaves the Section 28A annual voucher left to do there, along with this year's housing benefit subsidy claim, which is due to be started in January, if not before the Christmas break. So that will be being brought forward from last year. Okay, so I'll hand over to Bethan.
Thank you, Helen. Bethan?
Thank you, Chair. So as you can see, the list of performance audit work is before you on our quarterly update. I'll generally take the report as read. You'll notice that 2 of our reports have actually been presented at today's committee. The sort of last or final one for the audit year will be the local piece of work on environmental health services, which we are currently scoping, due to be delivered in Q4. But I'm happy to take any questions that anybody has on any of the other audits which are listed there. I know there's quite a few, so rather than go through them all.
Thank you for that, Bethan. Are there any questions on the report? No. Obviously, there's the you're about to carry out the work for temporary accommodation, I see, and that's being scoped, I should imagine, at the moment with the head of housing. So, where are we with that?
Yeah, temporary accommodation is underway already, and I think we've already had interviews with your head of housing on that piece of work. So that one's well underway. The only other audit I would bring to your attention is the unscheduled care, thematic review of unscheduled care. So you'll see that towards the top of the page. That report covers the health board area and has been issued in draft for clearance, but just to remind everybody, I suppose, or bring to the committee's attention that that report is being cleared through the RPB structures, because it covers a number of councils and the health board, and that was thought was the best mechanism by which to clear it, so we had one response. But I will keep you updated as to where we are with that.
Yeah, thank you for that, Beth. And the other one is this financial constraints discretionary local government services study. And obviously the scope doesn't correlate in regards to the study, I believe. It says examining the potential impacts and council decision-making processes in the context of sustainable development principle. Is there an explanation to that? Because, well, you know, if you look at the study and it says financial constraints, discretionary local government services, you know, obviously there are various services which are discretionary. Leisure is a discretionary service, which, you know, is the scope around sustainable development in those services, or what?
I'll come back to you on that, Chair. I mean, at the moment, that is currently being scoped. The scope hasn't been defined on that yet. So what you see there might just be a holding paragraph as to generally it will look at impacts of decision making, and it will include the sustainable development principle as standard. So I suspect that's been added in there because we haven't got down to the actual detailed scoping of it yet. But I will find out and come back to you just in case there's anything else that can be added, Chair. No,
that's great, because I find the scoping a bit misleading. But again, I think when we look at the you know, the previous report we did about financial sustainability and that, then discretionary services are areas that are likely to be cut. And you know, but the unintended consequences, if you say, right, we're going to cut leisure services, the unintended consequences of the health of the community and such like will be immense. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see what the scope is in regards to that piece of work, I think.
Absolutely, and I'll keep you updated on where we are with it as we go along with our regular, you know, updates as well.
Yeah, no, that's lovely. You know, thank you for that, Beth. Are there any other questions? No, any comments? No, I think basically we note the Audit Wales work programme and timetable for Newport City Council. Someone prepared to move? Thank you, Norma. Can I have a second there? Thank you, Jason. Anyone against? No. Thank you. Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Bethan, for that. You can stay, obviously, if you wish. Otherwise, thank you very much for coming along. Okay, next item on the agenda is item 15, because, again, the other two items then have been deferred, I assume, the letter of representation and the audit inquiries letter.
Chair, I think Helen's going to take us through the audit inquiries letter.
Oh, have I got a copy of it?
So the audit inquiries letter is a letter that we request from management and those charged with governance to give us assurances about certain matters regarding the financial statements. So this is actually to feed into our risk assessment and audit planning. So it's not actually something that goes alongside the accounts, and the letter of rep is a specific representation on the statement of accounts. So the audit inquiries letter has been completed by your officers and you as a committee, and I'd just like to say thank you very much for all the detail and the time it's taken to complete the letter. It's very comprehensive and good quality, and yeah, contains information we need to feed into that risk assessment.
Thank you for that, Ellen. Unfortunately, I didn't have the paper, but in my hard copies.
Okay.
That's okay. My apologies. Any questions on the audit inquiries letter? Any comments? No? I assume the recommendation is to note. Yeah. Someone prepared to move, please? Thank you. Seconder. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone against? No. Thank you. Thank you, Helen, for that. As I said, if you wish to leave, then please do so. Otherwise, you can stay. Item 12, then, is the Internal Audit Plan 24-25 Progress Quarter 2.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Dan can't be here with us this evening, so we've got his colleague Pauline Connolly and Linda Rees here. I think Pauline is going to take the lead and take us through the main points in the report. Thanks, Pauline.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Marion. Thank you, Chair. Just to talk you through the Quarter 2 progress report. The first couple of sections, paragraph 3 to 5, refer to the internal audit staffing, and I think that's a paper that Marion's going to discuss later on in the meeting. The paragraph 6 outlines the second quarter's work that's been completed to date. Appendix B outlines all the completed and live opinion jobs within 2024-25. The work that's completed to date have received a positive assurance opinion. There's been 2 substantial, 4 reasonable and 2 unqualified grant returns. Works has also been completed on the National Fraud Initiative, where the 2024-25 data was provided to the Welsh Government following spot checks by the audit team. There was 1 limited opinion that was provided within the quarter that related to the fleet and vehicle maintenance contract, which is going to be subject to a governance and audit committee call-in in due course. There's 1 investigation that was undertaken in this quarter, and I'm advised it's a low-level investigation. And then there's 2 follow-ups that have been undertaken at the present: children's money follow-up and an adoption allowance follow-up. In paragraph 14, it refers to the internal audit assessment against the public sector internal audit standards. There's a requirement for internal audit teams to be externally assessed against these standards once every 5 years, and the purpose of this external assessment is to help improve the delivery of the internal audit service to the organisation. The external audit assessment has been against the public sector internal audit standards for 2017, and this review was recently undertaken by the Chief Internal Auditor from Swansea. If you look at paragraph 15, it shows the assessment results against the 304 standards. There was conformance to 271, 17 partial and 1 non-conformance. Dan was aware of the partials and the non-conformance. For the 1 area of non-conformance, it relates to the audit charter, which is overdue its review. There was a conscious decision not to update it due to the upcoming new internal audit standards. The new global internal audit standards go live in January 2025, and the public sector internal audit standards are due to go live in 2025. The intention is to update the internal audit charter in Q4. For the partial non-conformance issues, there is an action plan in place, and there's responsible owners and timescales to address these. If there's any questions, Linda and I would like to take them forward to Dan.
Thank you, Pauline. Myron?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Pauline. So, in summary, I would say that your audit team are slightly behind on the audit plan, but I guess one of the benefits of being in a large, organisation is that Dan has now secured a lot of resources to sort of catch up on the audit plan, and he's confident that the minimum percentage is going to be completed by the 31st of March. That is in train. The public sector auditing standard is actually a really good success story, because clearly our situation in the last 18 months has not been very easy at all. But for us to have been assessed and to have passed is actually a good result, and I'm really pleased that we were able to sort of do that, as it were. So my thanks to both Dan and obviously colleagues in securing that assessment in what is a very difficult context in the last 12 to 18 months or so. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Myron. Any questions? No. Norma?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to be clear. In the table, there are 3 audits referred to: Scambusters Grant, Fraud Risk Assessment, and the NFI, the National Fraud Initiative, and they're marked as unqualified other.
Norma, can you speak into the microphone?
Beg your pardon. Shall I repeat that? Would that be
Yeah.
easier? And I'm just saying, in the list, I've picked up 3 audits: the Scambusters Grant, Fraud Risk Assessment, and the National Fraud Initiative. And they're marked as unqualified, other, and other. What does that actually mean?
So I'll offer you an answer. Pauline or Linda can correct me if I get this wrong. So the internal audit team do carry out a small number of grant claim work on behalf of, Welsh Government or other paying departments. They don't require an external audit, but they do require an audit. And internal audit departments carry out that work. So the 2 that are shown as unqualified means that they've done the audit of those grant claims and no problems. They were fine.
Okay.
The fraud risk assessment was a piece of work that was done sort of towards the end of the previous financial year, beginning of this financial year, which was really around our risk landscape, and that work is currently being assessed by the corporate management team as to how best to take that forward, and we will be reporting it to this committee in due course. Because clearly that was an area that Audit Wales raised with us last year, and we've been lucky enough to be able to do that piece of strategic, high-level risk assessment of fraud in the organisation. Clearly, we need to be very sensitive as to how we surface that, as you can imagine, but we will need to surface it, and will do.
I think that was my point, really, because I've been wondering, as a committee member, when we're actually going to get stuff on fraud, because we don't see the National Fraud Initiative work, do we, that's done in the Council. And I think it's really important that it's brought to our attention. And I want to know as well about how staff are trained in counter-fraud, for example. What training is there? Because it really is important that people are well aware of the issues of fraud, externally and internally.
We will bring a report on that counter-fraud work, and we'll update you on the NFI work. The NFI work is something that we continuously do, but we will update you on all of our fraud activity work in a specific report. And now that I think the corporate management team have finished their discussions on that risk assessment, we can bring a more comprehensive position to you on that. I'm very keen that we report to you that we're taking forward some of the issues that was raised last year, and we have. I'm confident of that.
Any other questions? No, I'm glad Norma has raised those, because I was going to raise them as well, but I just want to reiterate the point about fraud risk assessments and the national fraud initiatives. Clearly, we also had an Audit Wales report on it, didn't we, where it was saying that the authority was lacking, and there were a series of recommendations which came out of that in regards to not meeting the standards, etc., etc. I'm just concerned about the opinions given. It was the same as I raised the issues in a report previously where there was a bit of consultancy work done, that they weren't recognisable to me in regards to what was being done. What I don't want is other masking the issue about it being unsatisfactory, because I think we do need to be open and transparent in these issues. And if the National Fraud Initiative and the fraud risk assessment is unsatisfactory, then picking up Norma's point, then let's deal with it in an open and transparent manner, not mask it by another. So that's the comment I was going to make on that. The other one is in regards to unqualified. Thank you for that again, because again, that's not in the normal process of things. And I think in the report, we need to deal with these issues where they're outside the unsatisfactory, limited, whatever it is, etc., etc. That would be very useful as narrative, certainly for me and I think the committee. Clearly, you've picked up the fleet vehicle management, which is again limited, but I think we need to know a bit more about that, because normally we would get what the issues were outstanding in regards to that limited opinion. and obviously we usually get the action plan that's been agreed by the Directorate in regards to dealing with the recommendation, because currently we don't know what the recommendations are out of that. And I think if we're going to get a report where they are limited or unsatisfactory, then we need to get the detail so that we consider whether or not we're calling them in. Because I know paragraph 10 of the report says fleet vehicle maintenance, which will be subject to a governance and audit calling in due course. Well, what we're calling them in for? Do you see what I mean? You know, you don't, again, I keep saying it, you don't know what you don't know. So I think those are the points I would make, Myron, in going forward. So I think we understand the report coming, which you've said, in the management teams considered the National Fraud Initiative and the Fraud Risk Assessment. I think what we need to come with that is the Audit Wales report, what's being done as a council in regards to that, picking up Norma's usual points, where's the action plan about what's being done, and you know, what, you know, maybe we need to look at it again, because I know a report we're going to consider a little later on is that, you know, we can ask individuals to do some fraud work for us. So I think, you know, it's essential that we get to the nub of that, because if it is an issue for the council, because Audit Wales has raised it, let's be an open, transparent, and let's deal with it. Any other questions? No. Any comments? No. Okay. I think the recommendation is that we note the report, but clearly in the reports coming in future, if we can have a lot more information in regards to the limited and the unsatisfactory, and obviously picking up the issue about the National Fraud Initiative, if we can get a report, will we be able to get a report by January?
Yeah, I'll make sure that I have a discussion with Dan on that one, and aim to
just give us an update position, Myron. So firstly, we note the contents of the report, and B, that we have a report on the National Fraud Initiative and the fraud risk assessment at our January committee. Someone prepared to move? Thank you. Seconded. Thank you. Anyone against? No. Thank you very much for that. The next item then is the long-term audit arrangements.
Thanks, Chair. I'll take this one. So the committee is obviously aware that we've been operating on an interim basis over the last 18 months or so, and I've been tasked with ensuring that we have a robust long-term plan for taking our internal audit services forward. This report is pretty much the report that I will be sending to Cabinet, who will make the decision on this long-term provision, but I'm seeking this evening Governance and Audit Committee's comments, which will be reported to the Cabinet as part of that paper. So there's two questions that have been asked. One is, do we stick with an in-house department, or do we seek to externalise or outsource this provision into something bigger to give us resilience, expertise, etc.? And then, having answered that question, who's best placed to actually deliver what we need? So the report goes into the detail as to around entering into a public sector partnership around the delivery of this service in the future, and it explains why that is this council's preferred choice in going forward. This will allow us to get into an organisation which has this, the capacity, the skill sets, etc., to give us resilience, expertise, including in this kind of fraud area that we've just been talking about now, and the capacity to build that specialisms in the future. The report then says, having recommended that we go with a public sector external partnership, you know, there are two obvious choices that we've been talking to. One is the Southwest Audit Partnership, SWAP, who are currently doing the interim work for us, and which is a very well-established 20-year, 80 staff, 25 audit clients service, very mature organisation, versus a developing South Wales partnership, which started about 4 or 5 years ago with 4 councils, now down to 3. And I've assessed both of those and talked to them around, you know, the various issues that we're seeking assurance on. And, you know, without this wanting to be any criticism of the South Wales Audit Partnership, my recommendation is clearly to go with the SWAP, the South West Audit Partnership. They will provide us with the greatest resilience. It will provide us with specialisms that we couldn't get at the moment in the South Wales partnership. And it will suit the Council's needs better at this point. And that is going to be the recommendation to the Cabinet. Clearly also, transition arrangements will be a lot easier because they're already providing the interim solution. Last thing from me on this one, there will be no change to the internal audit budget, the fee that we pay for this. The current budget is £365,000 in this year's budget. There's no intention to reduce that budget next year because of this change. That will be the fee that is available to whoever carries out the audits. And I've ascertained from both options that the amount of audit days that buys us is pretty much where we are now. So that's been very comforting as well. So, Chair, here to gather thoughts and comments, which I will relay back on the Cabinet report, which will go to their December meeting. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you for that, Byron. Are there any questions? Norma.
Just one minute. The committee has been informed for some time that you've been in discussions with the South Wales audit practice, so we're aware of that. And you've explained the financial implications. In fact, there aren't any. The budget will remain the same. What about the staffing issues?
Yeah, so we've been keeping the 3 members of staff that are at the Council at the moment informed as to the discussions. So they are fully aware of this paper and the recommendations that we are being made. We will now enter formal consultation following the Council's normal procedures for this type of change. But I've been discussing with both organisations some of the high-level issues. So they're both public sector partnerships within the LGPS in terms of pension, no change. And they are on the NJC pay scales, same as we are, no change. Service to dates, etc., all recognised. And there will be the opportunity for them to stay on Newport terms and conditions or to transfer to the new body's terms and conditions. That is a choice that they have. Clearly, we will now enter into more detailed conversations with them on that one and the staff. So, we will be very careful to ensure that we look after the interest of our staff and strike a balance there to ensure, because the 3 of them will be still be Newport City Councils, I'm sure, audit staff in the future. So we need to make sure that those things are covered off to everybody's satisfaction.
John?
Thank you, Chair. It's a comment rather than a question, to be honest. It is just to reiterate some of the points that Myron was making. Having looked at the comparison, to me, it does seem to make perfect sense to go with SWAP, just in terms of the expertise they can offer, economies of scale and the ease of transfer. Just really backing up everything that Myriam said. To me, I think that recommendation is one that we should go along with. I can't see any reason not to. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. Anything else? No? Comments? Don?
Yeah, comments. I'm reading the report. I would have thought that in looking at SWAP, the work that I've done on them in terms of them representing, they haven't lost any clients, and their client base includes they've got a clean wash of all the Southwest England police forces. But more importantly for me, they've got Hull City Council and they've got East Riding of Yorkshire. They've got Somerset Council, as well as Powys in Wales. But I think they've got the spread and the expertise. Also, it's my understanding from a comment that SWAP have also got some staff that are supporting the South Wales, audit service. So there's a real premium on trying to keep audit services and getting and keeping people. So in terms of with the SWAP, I actually would the report, I would think for me is a good report. There is a question in the back of my mind why you didn't tender, but I'm sure there's a good reason why you didn't put this out to tender, a formal tender. But I agree with the report, and I think SWAP are a good organisation. They've served the council really well, because where we are now, I never thought we would be in terms of performance. And obviously the concern has when they have the contract, they keep to that same basis, but I know you'll be holding them to that.
Thank you for that, Don. I think I'll just give a few comments, Myriam, if I may. I'm not against the recommendation one bit. I think provided the service you will be entering into meets the needs of Newport City Council, then obviously it's a matter for the Cabinet to make the decision and based upon your report. So I think, that I would say at the outset is key, is what is needed for Newport City Council. I do have some comments to make which I would like for you to incorporate in your report back to Cabinet. Picking up the point that Don has just raised is, should this have been tendered? Now obviously it is a commercial negotiation which you will be entering into with SWAP. They're on commercial terms. My sort of threshold law is somewhat limited nowadays, but these are professional services, and therefore if it exceeds under the whatever it used to be, and whether they still relate, I don't know, should it actually go out to tender? So I just want that signed off or clarified by the lawyers, really, so that we don't get caught in regards to whether it should or shouldn't have gone out to tender. Whether there are people in the on the government list of specialist providers or not is I don't know. But again, we've just got two comparisons at the moment. We've got an internal joint committee arrangement, it would have been, or we've got SWAP. And again, I think we just need to get that clarified before going further. That's the first point. Second point is the TUPE issue. Obviously, members will be aware that TUPE applies in regards to this. I find it interesting how they can actually stay on Newport City Council's terms and conditions if they are TUPing to a new organisation, because again, that may be difficult to handle in relationship terms, because what you don't want is, SWAP to be on some preferential terms and conditions and Newport City Council not. So it's just that clarity, Myriam, as to whether that's lawful, whether they can stay on Newport City Council's terms and conditions. It's important, as Norma's been said, that the staff have been engaged in this throughout and are aware of the consequences. And again, I think that comes to the cheap issues, really, that they're given the appropriate advice, either through the HR team here or through their union representatives. Going on to unions, have unions been consulted if they're union members in regards to this proposal? And again, just square that off, because again, what you don't want is Unison or GMB or wherever causing major concerns over this. Confirmation that you will continue to receive the same level of service that you're currently getting for the £365,000. So obviously we've currently got X number of audits which are being carried out. I think it's important that we either confirm that that will continue, or clearly it's going to be negotiated down, because you won't get more for it, because as costs start to go up, you know, if there's a change again in national insurance or whatever it may be, then there is an issue there in regards to that. And finally, that, you know, contractual terms and conditions meet the needs of the council, and all the safeguards and guarantees are in place, one of which is there's a contractual break within it, so that if anything happens in the future, you know, you're not getting the level of service, because I'm sure we will want a report back from you, Maureen, to say that service is either good, bad or ugly, you know, in the future, so that if you are not satisfied, the council's not satisfied with the service, that it can either terminate, or there are penalty provisions within the contract if they're not delivering the service requirements that you need. So if those issues can be picked up, just, you know, I think that will be contracts negotiations and that in reality. But it's just getting that assurance that we will continue to get a good service which has been provided to date, even though, as has been acknowledged in the last report, they're currently behind, but they're going to throw some resource at it. As long as that resource is within the 300, if we were in a current contractual situation, we're within the 365,000. Not that all of a sudden you're going to be charged at the end of the year a huge overspend because of the additional work that's required.
Thank you, Chair. No, that's fine. All those, I've noted them down. They'll be on the Cabinet reports, and I will provide a response to them as well. But certainly the very first one you said, that's the very first question that I've answered myself as well. Because this is a public sector partnership with a technical compliance company, can we do sort of this? So I've cleared off a lot of these issues, and a number of your questions, of course, we will be clearing off through the process now. And grateful for your comments, and I will be reporting those and taking care of them myself as well. Okay.
Thank you for that, Murray. And picking up the technical compliant company, what I wouldn't want is another technical compliant company come out to the woodwork and say, you didn't tender this work and we could have delivered this. So I think the issue you've got is by going to a single, in reality it's a single outside organisation, that just gives me that concern. I just want that squared off, Rhys.
Yeah, no, we will. It is slightly. We're not commissioning the service. We'll be joining as a part of the service. So we'll square it off in the report. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Okay. So if there are no other comments, the recommendation is, yeah, we note the contents of the report and we are supportive of. I can say that, can't I? We're supportive of your proposal. Subject to the comments made being raised at Cabinet and obviously dealt with as you go through the process now, because it's not a fait accompli. If something comes up and a hiccup, then we're back to square one. But I hope we're not back to square one in reality. Okay, someone prepared to move, please? Thank you, Don. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Norma. The next item is the Draft Governance and Audit Committee Annual Report 23-24.
Thanks, Chair. So this obviously has been previously. There were some comments made. They've been incorporated in the report. Are you happy with the updated report and for it to go forward to Council for January? And I suppose also then, last year I presented it. It's about how you want to deal with that this year.
Yeah.
And Chair, just to sort of, sorry, I was just making some notes there. We've taken on board the comments that you made in the September meeting. 3 areas that you wanted looked at, which was the biographies of the independents. Those are in paragraph 2.4. The interest and the help that you gave me in terms of the resourcing issues in internal audit, that's now reflected in some changes we've made. So paragraph 4.7, and the third issue you raised in September was the improvements to services and the help to services through the call-in process, and that is in section 5 of that report now. So we've faithfully updated it for your comments in September, and hopefully now we can take it forward to the council.
Yes, I think that's right, and thank you for reminding me. I had a similar report this morning, and I didn't allow any of the members to raise any questions on it, because any comments they should have made previously. So it's no good raising it now. I assume there are no questions, and there are no comments. I think it's a very good report, thank you, and thank you, Rhys, for offering to present it to Council. Well, you know, a willing man is better than a pressed man, so, you know, if you want me to attend, I will. Right, just let me know. I will attend whenever. When is Council? Is it January? Okay, well, that's okay. I'm away for a fortnight in January, but we'll chat about it afterwards, Rhys. But, you know, I don't mind coming if someone wants me to come along. So the recommendation is that we approve the Governance and Audit Annual Report for 23-24 for presentation to full Council. Thank you, Don. Seconder. Well done, Norma. Scratch your nose. You just bought it. Anyone against? Nope. Thank you very much. And then we've got item 18, which is the work programme. Who's the Taylor? Oh,
okay, I technically
second
do
appearance on committee.
So it's just
you need an upgrading for this, right? You know,
yeah.
Remind Rhys.
So it's just to note the forward work programme reflects all the committee's upcoming reports. A draft will be sent out in the next few weeks to the officers and the committee members just to make sure everything looks all right. I hope you're okay with it, because it's the first time I've done it.
Yeah, I think obviously we've got 2 call-ins there, which is the adoption allowances and the children's money. And I'm sure Tanya's happy to come back again in regards to court. No, there we are. I've got 3 reports on there now to deal with, provided that's added on. I don't think there's anything else we added on tonight, is there?
I've made notes of some things, like other reports come in January and with finance. So once I've got it all written down from the minutes, I can send it out and then clarify it for the dates we know that are confirmed. Yeah,
I think we've asked Myron to come back with something as well, haven't we? So, yeah, okay, so if that can be picked up. Subject to those amendments, someone happy to move that we accept the endorse the forward work programme, subject to the amendments? Yeah, thank you, Norma. Oh, well done, Don. Thank you. Oh, John, sorry, I missed your hand.
It's okay, I was just moving seconded.
Oh, right, thank you, John. That's very kind of you. Thank you. Anyone against? No, that's that done. And then we've got the date of the next meeting, which I think is January the 30th at 5 p.m. Before I call the meeting, can I thank everyone for their contribution tonight? I think Stay in the Distance deserves an award, because not many of us are about in the council chamber. But can I thank everyone online as well for their contribution this evening as well. And in closing the meeting, can I wish everyone a very Merry Christmas, and for the local authorities, a very prosperous New Year, I'm sure that there's significant money going to be coming from Welsh Government. You never know what's going to be in your stockings over Christmas. But thank you very much, and as I said, thank our colleagues from Audit Wales, isn't it now? Thank you for your contribution, Helen, and thank your colleagues as well for their input this evening. Thank you very much. The meeting is now closed.